The chains rattled first, then came the laughter. I stood in the cargo bay of Threll Station with my boots planted on cold metal, listening to 100 voices above me on the observation ring, all of them laughing at the same joke. Me, Lot 231, the auctioneer had called out only minutes earlier. Human designation, Cale Ferris. Bid item, 1 crippled albino worm, wing shattered, hatched wrong, unsellable. Nobody had bid against me. Nobody wanted to. The Vorn shipwrights were busy fighting over drake mounts bred for 100 generations of war. The Scalarii war clans wanted siege serpents that could tear through hull plating, and I, the only human on a station full of alien traders, was handed a joke wrapped in chains. She lay curled in the corner of the bay, and even from a distance I could see why nobody wanted her. Her scales were the color of old bone, not the proud pearl white of a bred ceremonial beast, but a sick, bruised shade that spoke of years without sunlight. Her right wing was folded at an angle no healthy wing should ever bend. The membrane was torn in 3 places and stitched over badly, like whoever operated on her did not care whether she ever flew again. She did not lift her head when I stepped closer. She simply watched me with one pale eye, waiting for whatever came next. A blow, a shout, something cruel. 6 years of being someone's punchline had taught her to expect nothing else. I crouched down, keeping distance, the way you approach anything that has been hurt too many times by people. "Hey," I said quietly. "My name is Cale." She did not answer. Worms do not speak the common tongue, not in any language station scanners could translate, but her ear frills twitched at the sound of my voice, just slightly, as if she was surprised that someone was speaking to her instead of about her. The quartermaster handed me her chain with a smirk stretched across his face. "Cheaper than a scrap fee," he said. "You should be thanking us." I did not answer him either. I only looked at her, and something in my chest tightened, the same way it used to tighten back on Earth when I saw an animal nobody else believed could be saved. That night I pulled every record Threll Station had on worm physiology. There was not much, because nobody studies broken animals, only prized ones. What I found told me enough. Worms fly using powerful wing muscles supported by a light, hollow bone structure and a gas sac running along the spine, which most species mistake for simple buoyancy. Her wing bone had been set by a careless surgeon in a fixed, rigid position, good only for looking impressive behind display glass, useless for flight. Worse, 6 years without movement had let the flight muscles waste away to almost nothing. Any station veterinarian would have told me the damage was permanent. Bone does not undo itself. Muscle that has vanished does not simply return. But I was not a veterinarian. I was an engineer, and engineers do not see permanent. We see a problem that has not yet met its solution. For 2 weeks I did not touch her wing at all. I only sat beside her, brought her meals with my own hands instead of letting the automatic feeder do it, and spoke to her about anything that came to mind: home, stars, the tangled politics of the outer Concord, until the day she finally rested her head against my knee, as if she had decided, cautiously, that I was not going to hurt her. I named her Astra. She never told me whether she liked the name. I chose to believe she did. Then came the difficult part. I could not reset a bone that had already fused wrong, not without risking her life on a table with no real surgeon willing to help. But I could build. I spent months of my station wages gathering titanium alloy scrap and small servo motors from a passing human cargo ship, and out of it I built her an external brace, light enough not to strain her, adjustable at 3 separate joints to mimic the range of motion her wing should have had before that lazy operation locked it stiff. It looked crude, bolted straps and exposed wiring against smooth white scales. A Vorn engineer who saw it called it an insult to proper wormcraft. It worked anyway. Twice a day, every day, I strapped that brace onto her wing and guided it through slow, careful motion. Just enough to wake muscle fibers that had slept for 6 years. Never enough to tear anything still healing. It was the same kind of physical therapy my grandmother needed after her hip surgery, and I remembered every session I once helped her through. Turns out the principal does not care what species is being healed. Astra hated it at first. Pulling at old scar tissue is never gentle work, no matter how careful the hands doing it. Some days she snapped at me. Some days she curled away completely and refused to let me near the wing. I never forced her. I only came back the next day, and the day after that, and let her decide, again and again, that trusting me was worth the discomfort. 6 months into our work, she extended that wing fully for the first time since the surgery that ruined it. I stood there covered in grease and hydraulic fluid, and I actually cried, because every alien on this station had told me for half a year that I was wasting my life on a broken joke of an animal, and here she was, moving a wing that was never supposed to move again. Word travels fast on a station full of bored diplomats. People began stopping by, not to laugh anymore, mostly just curious. A Scalarii matron who had bred war beasts for 3 centuries watched one of our sessions in complete silence and left without a word, which from her kind is close to a standing ovation. Muscle returns slower than bone heals. I built a resistance system out of adjustable counterweights so Astra could rebuild her own strength at her own pace, and I spent every spare credit finding a protein supplement close enough to her biology to actually help. A full year after that auction, I removed the brace for good. Her wing held its new shape on its own. The bone remodeled around the correction the way bone always does when given a real reason to heal. She still did not fly. A year of wasted muscle does not undo itself in a single afternoon, but there was something worse holding her back. I saw it the day station engineers finally let us use an empty launch bay. She stood at the open edge, the void-shielded opening venting into the blazing dark beyond, and she hesitated, not from pain, from belief. 6 years of being told she was worthless had done as much damage as her wing ever had. So I did not build anything else out of metal. I only stood beside her at the edge of that bay, the way I had stood beside her every single day for a year, and I said the same words I always said. Whenever you are ready. I am right here. She looked out at the open dark. She looked at me, and then, whether from trust or muscle memory finally waking up, or 6 years of stubborn refusal finally breaking apart, she ran. 3 steps. 4. Both wings snapped open at once for the first time in her adult life, and the deck fell away beneath her as she climbed, clumsy and shaking and absolutely magnificent, a scarred white shape tearing a bright trail across the black. The observation deck above had gone completely silent. I learned later that half the station had gathered there, expecting to watch her fall. She did not fall. She climbed until she became a pale speck against the stars. Then she screamed, not from pain this time, but something closer to pure joy, and dove hard, rolling through open space like she was making up for 6 stolen years all at once. The Threll auctioneer who sold her to me as a joke found me on that deck afterward. He did not say much. He only watched her loop through the void lighting, his jaw slightly open, every trace of his old smugness gone from his face. She was unsellable, he finally said. She was unbroken, I told him. Somebody just forgot to ask her. I was not trying to sound clever. I meant it. It was the same thing I would have said about half the hopeless cases I grew up watching people give up on back home. The dogs nobody wanted, land nobody believed would grow anything again, people written off as too far gone to help. My own kind never had the comfort of writing things off easily. We had been broken more than once ourselves, and we understood the value of someone willing to sit through the slow, unglamorous work it takes to become whole again. Astra circled back and landed hard beside me, nearly knocking me off my feet, pressing her head against my chest the same way she had the very first night she decided to trust me. The same delegates who had laughed at that auction stood frozen, watching a joke of a gift outfly every prize beast on the station. Nobody was laughing anymore. Word of that flight spread through the Concorde faster than any trade agreement ever had. Within days, station broadcasts carried footage of a scarred albino worm tearing through the launch bay, and for the first time since I had arrived on Threll Station, alien delegates who once ignored me began asking questions. How had I done it? What had I built? Why had I bothered? I told them the truth every time. I bothered because something being broken does not mean it deserves to be thrown away. I bothered because patience costs nothing but time, and time was something I had plenty of. I bothered because 6 years of cruelty do not erase what a creature is capable of becoming once someone finally decides to try. The Scalarii matron returned a week later, this time with 2 of her breeding masters at her side. She studied Astra for a long moment, watching the way healed muscle moved beneath scarred white skin, and finally spoke words I had not expected from a warrior of her reputation. We would pay handsomely, she said, for whatever method saved this creature. I told her the same thing I told everyone who asked. There was no secret method, no hidden trick of engineering nobody else had thought of. There was only time, patience, and a willingness to keep showing up on the days progress felt impossible. Machines could rebuild broken bone. Exercises could rebuild wasted muscle. But nothing rebuilds trust except choosing, every single day, not to give up on something everyone else already had. Astra did not care about any of that conversation. She was too busy stretching her wings in the artificial sunlight of the observation deck, testing muscles that had spent 6 years forgetting what they were for. Every pass she made across that open space drew a small crowd, aliens who once called her worthless now standing quietly, watching her climb and dive and roll through open air like she had never known any other way to move. I stayed on Threll Station another 2 years after that first flight. Astra and I worked together every single day, not because she needed more repair, but because flight, once regained, needs constant strength to stay reliable. We built endurance slowly, careful cross-country flights through the station's massive interior rings, longer each week, until the scarred white worm who once could not lift her head off a cargo bay floor could outfly nearly every prized beast among the Concorde's traders. The auctioneer who sold her to me eventually asked if I would consider selling her back, at whatever price I named. I laughed for the first time since arriving on that station, and told him some things are never for sale again once somebody finally chooses to fight for them. Astra stayed with me, not as property, not as some prize I had won through clever engineering, but as something closer to family, the same bond my grandmother used to describe between an old farmer and the land he refused to give up on no matter how many seasons the harvest failed. Years later, when younger delegates on newer stations ask me why humans bother rebuilding what other species discard without a second thought, I tell them about a chained, broken, laughed-at creature nobody wanted, and how she became the fastest flyer this side of the outer Concorde, simply because somebody decided her story was not finished yet. Astra still flies every morning, tracing wide circles through open space, just to feel the wind she was told she would never earn again. And every single time she lands beside me afterward, pressing her scarred head against my chest the way she did on that very first night she chose to trust me, I remember exactly why none of it was ever a joke worth laughing at. It was simply a story that had not been finished yet, and we finished it together.